Blair Underwood, you're in New York now. You've got one of the all-time great parts in the history of entertainment, really, and that is Stanley in A Streetcar Named Desire. Tell us about working on this on Broadway right now.
Oh my God. Well, let me just start with saying it's a dream come true to work on Broadway. I mean, before we can even get to Tennessee Williams and the character of Stanley and A Streetcar Named Desire, it's, this is my 27th year in the business. And to finally, Chris, make it to Broadway, it's been great. But I've been waiting for the right project at the right time. And as you said, it for all the reasons you alluded to, it could not be a better time. And what an amazing character to play.
A lot of people have seen Streetcar in some form or another, either as a stage production, even in high schools and colleges, and on Broadway, as well as the film from many years ago that a lot of people have seen. What makes this production that you're doing and your cast and creative folks different from the ones that we've seen before?
Well, great question. Well, I'll tell you, one of the many things we wanted to do was make this production very specific and unique to New Orleans, Louisiana. More specifically, the French Quarter of New Orleans, where the play is set. Other productions, oftentimes there's a generic Southern context to the project. And, I had the good fortune of shooting a film in New Orleans the entire month of July. It's called On the Seventh Day and comes out April 13th, by the way, Chris, just so you know. It's Woman Thou Art Loosed on the Seventh Day, but I spent the entire month of July in New Orleans. So I had a chance to really soak up the flavors and the texture of the culture and really the melody of the language. And as you know, New Orleans is such an amalgamation and a gumbo of cultures, of music and food and flavor and everything, and speech and all of that. But there were two people in particular that I would listen to every day on the set that I just felt sounded as if I wanted my Stanley to sound with his New Orleans accent. And I had another friend of mine that had a very unique accent read each one of my lines so I could hear his melody and his lilt with the actual lines in the play. So what I'm doing is a combination of the two. But that said, that gives New Orleans a very, very specific context. Also, Terrence Blanchard, who is composing the music, 5-time Grammy Award winner, was born and raised in New Orleans. So the music that fills out this world is very much New Orleans, and the flavor and the feel and it's very real, just in terms of rooting it in the place and the context. So I think that is unique, and of course the fact that it's a multicultural cast. I don't say all African American because we have Eunice and Steve, the neighbors upstairs, that many people are familiar with. In our play, they're Caucasian brothers and sisters, and then we have Latin poker player that's always been consistent, Tennessee Williams, Streetcar, and you see all kinds of people. And when you read Streetcar, Tennessee Williams' very first description of the French Quarter, he speaks of a colored woman, quote unquote colored woman, as we were in the 50s, and a white woman sitting on a stoop talking to each other. And he speaks of how this is a place and a world where the races intermingle warmly. So he understood that world. I mean, he wrote Streetcar while he lived in the French Quarter. So that said, the fact that we are a multicultural cast is very historically authentic and accurate to this world and time and place.
Well, it's funny, we're talking about Tennessee Williams. I live here at Tupelo, Mississippi, and he's from Columbus, Mississippi. And it's just like an hour south of here, and they've got his birthplace there and all of that. So sometime when you're done with Broadway and you've got a break, you need to come down and visit this area, too.
I would love to do that.
Tell me, you've done a lot of stage work over the years in various places. What's different about being on Broadway as opposed to the other stage productions that you've done?
When I think of that, I often hear Felicia Rashad in my ear. I saw an interview recently, and she said, in one context, a stage is a stage is a stage. In other words, you have a stage and you have an audience, and our job is to really tap into and plug into that relationship between the two, the actors upon the stage and the audience itself. But having said that, Broadway is the epitome of the American theater. So there's a certain prestige, there's a certain regard, and a certain respect for a production when it's on the Great White Way, as they say, when it's on the boards here in the theater district of Broadway.
This is such.
By the way, ironically, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
No, I was doing some research on that even, and apparently the Great White Way initially referred to the white lights, the footlights at the foot of the stage, not necessarily the complexion of the people upon the stage.
So the lights remain the same.
The lights remain the same, the neon lights.
This is such an intense role. It's such an intense production. Is it the hardest job you've ever had? I know you've only been doing it a few weeks getting ready, but is it really difficult on you physically?
It's definitely one of the most challenging parts and roles I've played, emotionally, physically, because as you say, Stanley is a very physical being. He's always throwing things, he's always biting people's heads off, and he's always acting out. But it is challenging, within the 3-hour production, but also just the marathon that this will be. We're doing the play it's only 16 weeks, but it's 5 months of your life, and it's 5 months of being, tuned in and bringing this character to life every day for those 5 months. So it's something I completely and wholeheartedly embrace and love and can't wait to do. But at the same time, it's a bit challenging, but therefore, that tells me I'm doing the right thing. If it scares me a little bit, I'm doing the right thing.
Right. When I've talked to other people that have been on Broadway, they talk about the kind of a close-knit community. Have you felt that since you're kind of a newcomer to, at least on the Broadway stage? Have you felt kind of welcomed into the community?
I am a newbie in that sense, and Daphne Rubin Vega, who plays Stella, is a Broadway. She's my Broadway baby now, but she is a Broadway baby. Two-time Tony nominee from Rent, the original cast of Rent. She originated the role of Mimi, and Anna in the Tropics, she was nominated for Tony for that. So she knows this world inside and out, and she has said that it really is, ultimately, it's a very small community, and it's a great community to be invited into. And I do feel that to a great extent. They've been very welcoming in general, because at this point, and 5 weeks in, there are a number of events that you attend, and I'm glad to be invited to these events, because it's a different world, it's a different community than LA and Hollywood, and it's an honor. It really is.
Well, I wanted to talk a little bit about your extensive career. You've really been a fixture on TV the last quarter century. Just the big stuff alone. You've had The Event, New Adventures of Old Christine, Dirty Sexy Money, In Treatment, Sex and the City, and LA Law. So what about TV has appealed to you so much in this first section of your career?
I wanted to be on a cover of TV Guide one day. I see all those TV Guides behind you.
Yep, that's right. That's right. I got a lot of the classic stars back here.
No, I have just found that, especially now, I think some of the strongest writing and some of the shows and strongest pieces of entertainment are on television. I mean, I've been very fortunate to do films and continue to do films, and but great characters and great challenging characters are not always easy to come by. And I've been very fortunate to work in some projects that I really enjoyed and really respected the writing team, the creative team, starting with Stephen Bochco, as you mentioned, LA Law. You never really know what you're going to get. When you look at the first script, you look at a pilot, and all you can do is look at the team of people, the pedigree of people that combine to do that come together for the project. And you take a shot. I mean, the In Treatment was like that. You can look at what you have, and with In Treatment, we knew that it was you and I talked then at the time, but we knew it was a hit in Israel at the time, and I could read the script and see it was challenging and dense and had depth to it, and was interesting. So it's hard to say, but I think what drives me more than anything is something that's going to challenge me, and something that is not necessarily repeating what I've done before, and something that hopefully people tune into, because ultimately we have to entertain an audience. So you hope you'll be in something that has a platform that people will at least be aware of and will tune into.
When you started out, I guess the first time that a lot of us saw you was LA Law. And that's an incredible part to get at the very first stages of your career. What did you learn as an actor that's helped you move forward in your career from people like Steven Bochco and some of those, especially those veteran actors that you had there on set with you?
What I learned more than anything was how to have longevity in the business. And I will never forget my first day on the set of LA Law. Steven Bochco came up to me and he said, "How does it feel to know you have a home for the next 5 years?" And that blew me away. I mean, you never even expect to hear that from in the entertainment world, especially in television. But he said that first, and then he said, to have longevity in this business, learn how to write. And he said, in a word, write. Now, writing was not my talent, but what I took away from that was learn how to create and produce product for yourself and others. And that way you can employ other people, give other people an opportunity, and yourself. So I took that to heart. I mean, Chris, I have a production company called Intrepid Incorporated. And that really, I think Steven Bochco planted that seed many years ago. But he said, basically, put yourself in the driver's seat so you're not always beholden to somebody else hiring you, whether it be a casting director or a network exec or studio exec. If you're creating your own product, then at least, then number one, you keep your sanity. And you're not always going to somebody else with your hat in your hand saying, "Please hire me."
You've written several novels. Has that been the most creatively fulfilling thing that you've done over your career?
Well, I'll say I don't write the books. I partnered with two writers, Tananarive Due and Stephen Barnes. What I realized we had in common was we were all storytellers. And the reason we partnered was because we all have our disciplines. They do books and I do film and television. But our common denominator is we're storytellers. So I produce the series, they write the series, but my domain is, my charge is to get those books to the screen, whether it be the big screen or television.
Well, Blair, we're an awards website. I wanted to ask you a couple of awards-related questions. Golden Globe nominations for In Treatment and for LA Law. What's it like, or what was it like for you at least, when you're sitting at your table there at the Globes, surrounded by all these celebrities and probably people you've admired, and your name is coming up in that category? What was that like for you?
Nerve-wracking. I think more nerve-wracking than last time, because the first time for LA Law was 20 years prior, so I just didn't even think I didn't have a chance of winning. 20 years later, you've been in the game a little bit longer, and you think there's possibility more of a chance that it could happen. So I think I had more nerves going the last time. But I think it depends on what you think the chances are. And you try not to let yourself get too caught up in the possibility. That way you're not disappointed if it doesn't happen.